Look closely at the wet asphalt of a sleeping suburban street just before dawn. A single European robin alights on the cold, galvanized steel of a streetlight fixture, its dark eyes shifting with an uncanny, silent rhythm. To a human observer shivering on the sidewalk, the world is a monochrome grid of concrete, timber, and shadow, illuminated only by the sickly orange hum of sodium vapor lamps. But inside the delicate cranial vault of this tiny songbird, reality is being calculated on a subatomic level. It is not merely looking at the tree lines, the power cables, or the damp earth below. It is measuring the invisible architecture of the planet itself, rendering the invisible visible through a radical mechanism that defies classic biology. For centuries, naturalists assumed that migratory birds navigated by simple landmarks, following river bends, coastline contours, and the warm arc of the morning sun. Orthodox science viewed these creatures as biological automatons, bound to instinct and driven by crude sensory cues. That comforting illusion has shattered inside modern quantum mechanics laboratories. When a bird tilts its head toward the northern horizon, it is not scanning for physical topography. It is operating a biological quantum sensor located directly within the specialized cells of its right retina. It feels the slant of the Earth's magnetic shield, translating invisible lines of magnetic force into a vibrant, shifting overlay of light and shadow superimposed across its visual field. To understand this sensory miracle, one must dismantle the microscopic engine hidden within the avian eye. Deep within the photoreceptor cells lies an enigmatic protein known as cryptochrome 4. As the weak blue light of dawn hits the bird's eye, a single photon collides with a light-absorbing molecule inside this protein, triggering an instantaneous cascade of chemical events. A single electron is launched across a microscopic chain of amino acids, creating a pair of radical molecules with unpaired electrons. For a fraction of a microsecond, these twin electrons exist in a state of delicate quantum entanglement. They are intimately linked, incredibly fragile, and exquisitely sensitive to the subtle angle of the geomagnetic field hums around them. Imagine standing on a frosted ridge in early October. The air smells of wet pine needles and decaying oak leaves. As a flock of thrushes rises into the mist, their calls sounding like thin glass beads dropping on stone, they are not flying blindly into the gray haze. As they face north, the quantum pairs inside their cryptochrome proteins tilt in harmony with the magnetic field lines curving through the atmosphere. Where the magnetic field pierces the Earth at a steep angle, the bird perceives a bright, shimmering halo of blue-green light. Where the field runs parallel to the ground, the light fades into a distinct velvety shadow. The sky is no longer an open expanse, but an annotated map written in quantum luminescence. This is not a passive sense, like feeling a faint breeze against feathers. It is an active, high-resolution visual mode. The bird sees the invisible magnetic web as a dynamic grid, an ethereal translucent blueprint stretched across the forest canopy and urban skyscrapers alike. While a human pilot requires complex gyroscopes and satellite navigation networks to cross an ocean in dense fog, a young bird embarking on its very first transcontinental flight relies on a pair of entangled electrons floating within a protein smaller than a strand of silk. It is a level of sensory integration so precise that it blurs the line between classical biology and quantum physics. Consider the physical reality of a migratory flight across a modern, artificial landscape. A songbird descends toward a tangled patch of suburban woodland at dusk. Below, human infrastructure bristles with unseen electronic noise. High-voltage power transmission towers hum quietly in the damp air, draped with thick copper cables that pulse with alternating current. Cellular towers spike into the sky, broadcasting continuous radio frequency signals through the atmosphere. To a classical eye, these structures are mere obstacles of metal and wire. But to a creature navigating via quantum entanglement, our modern cities are roaring ocean storms of electromagnetic disruption. Laboratory experiments have revealed that even minute levels of urban electromagnetic noise, signals thousands of times weaker than a standard cell phone call, can disrupt the delicate quantum balance inside cryptochrome 4. When a bird flies through a high-frequency urban zone, the artificial radio waves tumble the spin states of those entangled electron pairs, temporarily blinding its magnetic compass. Yet field observations show something extraordinary. Urban songbirds and corvids do not crash blindly into buildings or lose their way in metropolitan corridors. Instead, they calibrate. They cross-reference their quantum vision with an array of auxiliary sensory systems that border on sensory overkill. A crow perched on a rusted chain-link fence at the edge of an industrial rail yard executes a subtle, rhythmic head bob. Its dark, iridescent neck feathers catch the amber sunset as its sharp beak twitches. It is taking a double reading. It cross-checks the quantum light field in its right eye with the position of the setting sun, the polarized light patterns bending through the upper atmosphere, and the deep, subaudible infrasound vibrations echoing from ocean waves hundreds of miles away. It synthesizes these disparate sensory feeds into a single unified cognitive map, adjusting its flight path with the cold, calculating precision of a military tactical computer. We are forced to confront a profound philosophical shift in how we understand the animal mind. The avian brain is not a primitive biological circuit board, but an extraordinarily dense processing unit capable of managing multidimensional spatial data. While human perception is strictly locked within a narrow band of visible light and audible sound, birds inhabit a sensory continuum where quantum mechanics, atmospheric physics, and spatial memory fuse into a single seamless experience. Every backyard pine tree, every rusted power line, and every high-rise balcony is viewed through a lens that reveals the fundamental forces of the universe. The mystery deepens when we observe how these creatures interact with us within our shared environments. On a crisp autumn morning in a public park, a flock of starlings swoops low over a damp lawn, their dark plumage shimmering with metallic purple and green highlights. They turn in unison, executing sudden, sharp maneuvers that seem guided by a single mind. Each individual bird is constantly evaluating the position of its neighbors, the subtle shifts in the local magnetic gradient, and the movements of every human walking along the paved pathways. They are tracking us, studying us, and navigating our world using a sensory apparatus so advanced that human science is only now beginning to reverse engineer its basic principles. This quantum awareness does not exist in an evolutionary vacuum. It is tightly interwoven with one of the most sophisticated neurological architectures in the vertebrate world, the high-density avian forebrain. To see how quantum perception translates into advanced decision-making, we must look away from the open sky and examine the shadows of our urban alleys, where corvids have turned our own environments into cognitive proving grounds. In a quiet university courtyard in Seattle, a researcher steps onto the wet grass wearing a grotesque rubber mask with heavy brow ridges and exaggerated features. He carries a long aluminum pole. Within seconds, the tranquil morning air shatters. High in a canopy of moss-covered Douglas firs, a single American crow emits a sharp, triple-burst alarm call, a harsh, metallic rasp that vibrates at 3 kilohertz. It is not an automated stress response. It is a precise tactical alert. Within 90 seconds, over 40 crows converge from distant rooftops, circling overhead, their dark feathers rustling like dry leaves, diving in aggressive, coordinated swoops at the masked human. This famous behavioral experiment revealed a staggering truth about corvid cognition, episodic memory, and social learning that rival primate intelligence. The crows did not merely react to a threat in real time. They documented the specific physical geometry of the masked face, logged its precise location, and encoded the encounter into a permanent cognitive profile. Years later, long after the original researcher had left the campus, newborn crow fledglings that had never seen the mask would mob anyone wearing it. The memory had transcended the individual, passed down through generations as a detailed cultural tradition, a living dossier of a human enemy, written into the collective mind of the flock. To understand how a brain smaller than a walnut manages both quantum field processing and multi-generational facial recognition, neurobiologists had to look beneath the smooth surface of the avian pallium. For over a century, neuroanatomy operated under a flawed assumption, viewing the mammalian cerebral cortex as the sole engine of complex thought. Because birds lack a layered neocortex, their intelligence was dismissed as primitive instinct. But microscopic anatomical imaging has exposed a stunning evolutionary alternative. The avian nidopallium controls cognitive processing through dense modular clusters of hyper-efficient neurons, packed at densities double that of a chimpanzee brain. When a crow evaluates a human face from a telephone wire, its brain executes what scientists call mental time travel. Through episodic memory, it replays past human interactions, frame by frame, recalling whether a specific individual dropped a crust of bread, threw a stone, or simply walked past without looking up. It combines this visual history with its real-time quantum map of the surrounding urban grid, calculating angles of approach, escape routes through power lines, and the subtle wind shifts sweeping off asphalt parking lots. It is an intricate web of past experience and quantum spatial awareness operating in absolute synchronization. Consider the physical reality of a caching western scrub jay preparing for winter in a dry pine forest. The bird holds a single heavy pine nut in its beak. Its dark eyes scan the surrounding glade, observing a rival jay perched on a fallen birch log 30 paces away. The caching jay knows it is being watched. It pretends to bury the seed under a patch of brittle brown needle litter, covering the spot with a dry oak leaf. Then, quietly slipping around a granite boulder, it conceals the actual seed inside a crack in a weather-beaten fence post. This deceptive strategy requires a cognitive leap once thought unique to humans: theory of mind. The scrub jay must project itself into the mind of its rival, understanding that the other bird possesses its own desires, intentions, and visual perspective. It acts to manipulate the mental state of another individual. This is not instinctual reflex. It is a calculated act of tactical deception executed by a creature weighing less than 3 ounces, navigating a competitive landscape with the cunning of a master chess player. As evening settles over the city, thousands of rooks and jackdaws assemble on the steel trusses of a railway bridge. The cold air carries the smell of wet iron and coal dust. They do not gather merely to sleep. They are engaging in complex social negotiations, sharing information about foraging locations, and adjusting their dominance hierarchies through subtle variations in body posture, head tilts, and soft throat clicks. Their small, sharp eyes reflect the glowing red tail lights of commuter trains passing below. We are coming to realize that the avian mind represents a parallel peak of intelligence on planet Earth. While mammals evolved large, energy-hungry cortical structures over tens of millions of years, birds perfected an incredibly compact, highly optimized neural architecture that operates at the very limits of biological efficiency. They solved the problem of processing vast streams of sensory data, from quantum magnetic fields to multi-generational human faces, without the burden of a massive, heavy skull that would make powered flight impossible. Stand beneath a darkening sky as a flock of starlings rushes overhead in a vast, undulating murmuration. Thousands of tiny bodies move as a single, liquid entity, contracting and expanding against the twilight sky like a breathing organism. There is no leader, no central command. Each bird responds in milliseconds to the position of its 7 nearest neighbors, guided by a continuous stream of quantum, spatial data, and razor-sharp visual tracking. They draw complex mathematical patterns across the sky, a mesmerizing demonstration of collective intelligence that eclipses our most advanced artificial algorithms. When you look into the dark, unblinking eye of a songbird perched on your garden fence, you are not looking at a simple creature driven by blind instinct. You are looking into the lens of a sophisticated quantum navigation system, an ancient brain that remembers faces across decades, and a mind that perceives a hidden world of forces, vectors, and light completely invisible to human eyes. They walk among us in our cities, fly through our suburban backyards, and watch us from the power lines, quietly mapping our world through a sensory biological technology that science is only just beginning to comprehend.